Have you ever sat down to watch a Tom and Jerry cartoon, laughed as Tom chased Jerry with reckless abandon, and thought, wait a second, how many laws is this cat breaking? No? Well, maybe it's just me. But today, we're diving into that question to figure out exactly how long Tom, our favorite scheming feline, would spend in prison if he were held accountable for his crimes. Spoiler alert, it's going to be a very long time. Sure, you might say, but it's all in good fun. He's just trying to catch a mouse. True, but when your plans involve explosives, medieval weapons, and property destruction on an industrial scale, the law tends to have a few objections. This isn't just a playful game of cat and mouse, it's a legal nightmare. So buckle up as we rank Tom's crimes, from minor infractions like trespassing and harassment to outright attempted murder. By the end of this video, we'll tally up his sentence and see just how many lifetimes he'd owe behind bars. Let's begin with the small stuff, the petty crimes that set the stage for Tom's downward spiral into cartoon criminality. Let's face it, Tom's favorite pastime isn't catching mice, it's breaking and entering. This cat has absolutely no respect for boundaries, constantly invading Jerry's personal space or sneaking into places he shouldn't be. Remember the episode where Jerry hides in a neighbor's house and Tom casually breaks in like it's his own? Whether it's kitchens, bedrooms, or attics, Tom follows Jerry wherever he goes, with zero regard for property lines. If we're applying real-world laws, that's trespassing, a misdemeanor in most states. Punishment? A fine of up to $1,000, or up to 6 months in jail for every instance. And considering how often Tom does this, he's already racked up a few years before we even get to the serious stuff. Tom's chases don't just stay confined to walls and furniture, they obliterate them. How many times have we seen him crash through windows, knock over bookshelves, or straight up demolish entire rooms? One classic example is the kitchen episode where Tom chases Jerry across shelves, sending every plate, pot, and pan crashing to the floor. Now, let's put a price tag on this destruction. In the real world, smashing someone's belongings could land you with charges of vandalism or criminal mischief. Depending on the value of the damaged property, Tom could be facing anything from a $500 fine to multiple years in prison. And knowing Tom's flair for drama, we're probably looking at felony vandalism, especially when he burns down houses or smashes through walls. For instance, if we estimate the cost of repairing a kitchen at $10,000, and Tom causes similar damage in just 5 episodes, he's already looking at fines totaling $50,000 and a potential prison sentence of 5 years. And let's not forget the mental anguish of whoever owns the house. Honestly, at this rate, Tom should be working full-time just to pay off his debts. You know, looking at the sheer amount of destruction here, I can't help but wonder, if Tom can destroy a kitchen this badly, what kind of havoc could he wreak on the like button? Go ahead, give it a click. It's indestructible. And while you're at it, hit subscribe. Because honestly, if we're spending this much time analyzing the criminal record of a cartoon cat, you know the rest of our content is going to be just as unhinged. Poor Jerry. Imagine spending every day being chased by a giant predator who builds elaborate traps just to torment you. Tom doesn't just pursue Jerry for food. This is a personal vendetta complete with psychological warfare. He's built guillotines, booby-trapped doorways, and even rigged explosives, all to make Jerry's life a living hell. In the real world, Tom's relentless pursuit could easily qualify as harassment or stalking. For example, laws against stalking in many states define it as a pattern of behavior that causes fear or emotional distress. If a real-life Jerry took Tom to court, the cat could face serious consequences, potentially up to 5 years in prison for stalking alone. And let's not forget the time Jerry even had to file a restraining order against Tom in an episode. Okay, maybe that was just a gag, but you get the point. Tom is the epitome of can't take no for an answer. And if we're being honest, he's probably broken more harassment laws than we can count. Let's not sugarcoat it. Tom isn't just a mischievous cat. He's often downright cruel. Sure, chasing Jerry is part of the game, but when you start using medieval traps and fire as your weapons of choice, the game changes. Take the classic episode where Tom builds a literal guillotine to catch Jerry. Yes, a guillotine. This isn't just a cat chasing a mouse anymore. It's a full-on act of cruelty. In the real world, animal cruelty laws vary, but most jurisdictions consider intentional harm to animals a serious crime. For example, in the US, animal cruelty can be a felony punishable by up to 5 years in prison. And let's not forget the collateral damage. Tom doesn't just target Jerry. He's been seen tormenting Spike the bulldog and even other cats. That's multiple counts of cruelty. If we count just 10 notable instances, Tom could easily rack up 50 years behind bars. If there's one thing that Tom and Jerry taught us, it's that dynamite is apparently a household item. Tom seems to have an endless supply of explosives, using them in increasingly ridiculous ways. Whether it's stuffing Jerry's hole with fireworks or blowing up entire walls just to catch his nemesis, Tom's penchant for explosives is a serious safety concern. Let's put this into perspective. In the real world, possessing or using explosives without a license is a federal offense. Under U.S. law, the penalties for illegal possession of explosives can range from 10 years in prison to life, depending on the circumstances. And considering Tom often uses explosives in populated areas, like homes, beaches, and city streets, the risks are immense. Take, for example, the episode where Tom accidentally sets off a chain of explosions that levels an entire house. That's not just illegal possession, it's reckless endangerment on a massive scale. If we assign a 10-year sentence for each major incident, and we're being conservative, Tom could be looking at 100 years for his explosive antics alone. Let's talk about physical violence. Tom doesn't hold back when it comes to attacking Jerry, or anyone else who gets in his way. Frying pans, mallets, anvils. If it's heavy and capable of inflicting pain, Tom's probably used it. While we laugh at the cartoonish violence, in the real world, these actions would easily fall under assault and battery laws. Assault is generally defined as an intentional act that causes someone to fear imminent harm, while battery involves actual physical contact. Tom's attacks meet both criteria. For instance, the iconic anvil drop gag, that's battery with a deadly weapon. Swinging a frying pan at Spike, that's assault with intent to harm. In most jurisdictions, aggravated assault or battery with a deadly weapon can result in 10 to 20 years in prison. Let's not forget that Tom's actions often escalate into prolonged attacks. In one episode, he spends the entire day trying to crush Jerry with increasingly elaborate contraptions. If each instance of assault carries a 10-year sentence, and we count just 10 episodes with major physical altercations, Tom's looking at another 100 years behind bars. It's worth noting that Jerry isn't the only one suffering. Tom's antics frequently result in bystander injuries, property damage, and even harm to other animals. Spike the bulldog in particular has endured countless frying pans to the face, traps gone wrong, and explosions that leave him bruised and battered. In a real courtroom, these additional victims would only add to Tom's growing list of charges. Spike alone could testify to dozens of instances of physical harm, and if a jury were to hear about Tom's repeated attacks, his sentence could easily double. It's safe to say that Tom's obsession with catching Jerry comes at the expense of everyone around him. If there's one thing Tom excels at, besides failing to catch Jerry, it's putting everyone around him in danger. His antics are often hilariously destructive, but let's not ignore the fact that they create chaos for everyone in his vicinity. Take the beach episode, for example, where Tom's pursuit of Jerry causes a lifeguard tower to collapse, nearly injuring several bystanders. Or the time he chased Jerry onto a public train track, causing a train to derail and crash into a nearby station. These aren't just innocent accidents. They're classic examples of reckless endangerment. In the real world, reckless endangerment refers to actions that create a substantial risk of serious injury to others. It's a serious offense, with penalties ranging from hefty fines to up to 5 years in prison per incident. Considering Tom's long history of dangerous escapades, we're looking at dozens of reckless endangerment charges. Even if we conservatively estimate 10 major incidents, that's 50 years of jail time added to Tom's growing tally. Tom doesn't just chase Jerry around his own house. He's been known to infiltrate amusement parks, theaters, and even museums to continue his pursuit. One classic example is the carnival episode, where Tom sneaks into a theme park to corner Jerry inside a funhouse. Not only does Tom break in, but he also causes substantial property damage while doing so. Breaking and entering is a serious crime, especially when it involves trespassing into places like public attractions. Depending on the jurisdiction, this could lead to a sentence of up to 10 years in prison for each instance. If we assume Tom has broken into at least 5 such places during his relentless chases, That's another 50 years added to his record. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, or rather, the cat with homicidal tendencies. Tom doesn't just want to catch Jerry. Sometimes he seems dead set on eliminating him altogether. From setting traps with lethal intent to rigging explosives that could kill anyone in the vicinity, Tom's methods frequently cross the line from cartoonish mischief to outright attempted murder. Remember the iconic mousetrap episode where Tom sets up a Rube Goldberg-style contraption designed specifically to end Jerry's life? Or the time he used a giant boulder to crush Jerry, only to miss and destroy part of a city street instead? In the real world, these actions would qualify as attempted murder, a felony that carries a sentence of 20 years to life in most jurisdictions. Even if we assume Tom's intent was cartoonishly malicious rather than premeditated, the sheer lethality of his traps would still land him with multiple charges. Let's be generous and say only 5 of his countless schemes qualify as attempted murder. That's another 100 years in prison minimum. Tom's behavior isn't just dangerous, it's downright disruptive. Imagine living in a neighborhood where one cat constantly blows up walls, smashes windows, and leaves destruction in his wake. In several episodes, Tom's chases have resulted in complaints from neighbors, with police or angry mobs often intervening. While public nuisance might sound like a minor offense, chronic offenders can face significant fines and even jail time. In some cases, repeated violations can lead to felony charges. If we count Tom as a serial public nuisance offender, he's looking at fines totaling thousands of dollars and potentially another 10 years in jail. Let's not forget the innocent bystanders who suffer as a result of Tom's reckless behavior. From train passengers to museum patrons, countless lives are disrupted by his single-minded obsession with catching Jerry. In a real courtroom, victims could file lawsuits for emotional distress, adding civil liabilities to Tom's already staggering list of crimes. Even the property owners, whether it's the carnival manager or the homeowner whose walls Tom has obliterated, would have grounds to sue him for damages. While these penalties wouldn't necessarily add jail time, they'd leave Tom drowning in legal fees for years to come. Tom's obsession with catching Jerry has led him to commit some pretty blatant thefts over the years. From raiding kitchen pantries to stealing entire roast turkeys, Tom's sticky-pawed antics often extend beyond the mouse hunt. One memorable episode even sees Tom stealing a diamond to use as bait for Jerry, leading to chaos that destroys an entire jewelry store. In the real world, theft and burglary carry heavy penalties, especially when valuable items are involved. Burglary, defined as unlawfully entering a structure with the intent to commit theft or another crime, can result in up to 20 years in prison if it's a felony. And if the stolen items exceed $1,000 in value, Tom could face additional grand larceny charges. Let's estimate conservatively. Tom has stolen items worth at least $10,000 across various episodes, from food to precious gems. Add 5 counts of burglary for breaking into kitchens, museums, and shops, and we're looking at a combined 100 years in prison for theft-related offenses. Tom's chaotic pursuits often involve fire, lots of fire, whether it's accidentally setting a house ablaze or intentionally using fire as part of his traps. The flames almost always spiral out of control. A classic example is the episode where Tom tries to smoke Jerry out of his hole, only to burn down an entire section of the house in the process. In real-world terms, arson is a serious felony. Depending on the severity, it can result in 10 to 25 years in prison, especially if the fire endangers lives or causes extensive property damage. And let's not forget the fire department bills that would pile up after each incident. If we assume Tom has caused at least 5 significant fires over the years, he's staring down 100 years in prison for arson alone. That's not even accounting for the additional fines and restitution payments he'd owe to property owners. Jerry might be a tiny mouse, but Tom's fiery schemes are costing millions. Tom's antics don't just harm property, they put innocent lives at risk. One infamous example is the train track episode, where Tom's reckless pursuit of Jerry causes a full-on derailment. Another time, he commandeers a vehicle and crashes it into a marketplace, narrowly missing a crowd of shoppers. In legal terms, criminal negligence refers to actions that show a blatant disregard for the safety of others, resulting in harm or the risk of harm. Penalties can range from fines to 10 years in prison for each major incident. Given the number of times Tom's reckless behavior has endangered the public, he could easily face 50 to 100 years for criminal negligence. Tom's cunning side occasionally shines through when he uses deception to outwit Jerry, or anyone in his way. From dressing up as a chef to impersonating a dog catcher, Tom has pulled off some surprisingly elaborate schemes to gain the upper hand. In real-world terms, impersonating a professional, such as a chef or dog catcher, for personal gain is a form of fraud, which can result in up to 10 years in prison per instance. If we count just 5 notable cases of fraud or impersonation, Tom's looking at another 50 years behind bars. At this point, it's clear that Tom's actions aren't just misdemeanors, they're full-scale felonies. Between the arson, theft, and negligence, Tom's schemes have likely caused millions in damages. Add in the emotional trauma of bystanders, and the lawsuits alone could bury him under a mountain of debt for life. But let's not forget the one constant in all of this: Jerry. For every fire, theft, or fraud committed, Jerry remains the instigator, outsmarting Tom at every turn. While Jerry might not face charges himself, he's certainly a key witness in any courtroom drama featuring Tom. Who knows, he might even sue for emotional damages. Now that we've walked through Tom's greatest hits of criminal behavior, it's time to face the music. Let's add up the years from all the charges we've discussed so far. 1. Trespassing, 10 counts, 6 months each, equals 5 years. 2. Property damage, 5 incidents, 5 years each, whereas 25 years. 3. Harassment, 5 years for stalking, whereas 5 years. 4. Animal cruelty, 10 counts, 5 years each, equals 50 years. 5. Use of explosives, 10 counts, 10 years each, equals 100 years. 6. Assault and battery, 10 counts, 10 years, each equals 100 years. 7. Reckless endangerment, 10 counts, 5 years, each equals 50 years. 8. Breaking and entering, 5 counts, 10 years, each equals 50 years. 9. Attempted murder, 5 counts, 20 years, each equals 100 years. 11. Arson, 5 counts, 20 years each, equals 100 years. 12. Criminal negligence, 5 counts, 10 years, each equals 50 years. 13. Fraud and impersonation, 5 counts, 10 years, each equals 50 years. 14. Public nuisance, serial offender equals 10 years, total sentence, 795 years. And this is just the conservative estimate. If we included every single instance of Tom's chaos, and let's be honest, there are hundreds more, we'd be looking at a sentence spanning multiple millennia. But even with this modest tally, Tom isn't getting out anytime soon. To put Tom's 795-year sentence into perspective, let's compare it to some other infamous characters. Quagmire, Family Guy, 3,413 years. Homer Simpson, The Simpsons, approximately 100 years for minor offenses. The Joker, DC Comics, life imprisonment several times over. Tom may not rival Quagmire's sentence, but his 795 years place him firmly among the ranks of animated criminals. That's enough time for Jerry to relax, retire, and possibly open a nice cheese emporium. So, what have we learned today? Tom's relentless pursuit of Jerry isn't just slapstick comedy. It's a legal disaster waiting to happen. Between the trespassing, arson, theft, and numerous other felonies, this feline would be lucky to see the light of day again. But let's be fair to Tom for a moment. Sure, he's a criminal by human standards, but he's also a victim of his circumstances. He's a cat, following his instincts, trying to catch a mouse, who constantly outsmarts him. And let's not forget Jerry's role in this chaos. His traps and counterattacks aren't exactly innocent either. If this were a real court case, Jerry might not walk away unscathed. In the end, Tom's story reminds us of one thing. No matter how hard life gets, or how many frying pans hit you in the face, you just keep chasing your dreams, even if they land you with a 795-year prison sentence. And there you have it, Tom, the cartoon cat, who started with harmless hijinks and ended with a 795-year prison sentence. Honestly, I think the real tragedy here is that Jerry got away scot-free. But hey, that's for another video. If you enjoyed this deep dive into cartoon criminality, why not subscribe to the channel? It's 100% legal, unlike most of Tom's life choices, and it helps us bring you more weird, over-the-top content like this. And don't forget to head to the comment section and let us know, what's your favorite Tom and Jerry moment, and how many years would you give Tom? We'll be down there tallying up more sentences. See you next time.